Hi everybody, welcome back to a tactics video. This time, how to use the super heavies, basically the Baneblade family of units for Astra Militarum. So asking all the important questions in my channel, how to use this glorious unit. And for those of you returning, great to see you again. And for those who are new, welcome to the channel. So just like my previous videos, I try to make these videos more about how to actually use a unit, less about the individual data sheets, to which there's 8 in this family here. There will be, of course, a little bit of discussion about is the unit actually viable. And given they've all dropped by 30 points in the recent balance data, so it's worth the examination there. But again, I'm not going to go into too much detail about, is it actually a good choice? I'll let you make that decision, but I will definitely steer towards one conclusion as we get there. So just like the previous videos I always do, I look at some of the data sheet, some of them, and then I go through its positives, its negatives, how to effectively use it potentially, and also optimal configurations in your army list. So, to ground ourselves in this glorious unit, this absolute stellar showcase model. Firstly, if you buy the plastic kit, you have all the bits and pieces available to make the 8 variants, and you can check out an old video I did many years ago, I think it appears here, on how to magnetize. It's not the best, to be honest, now looking back at it, but it is one way of doing it, and you can then basically produce the 8 variants, to which there's multiple there. And that's in the one kit at 115 quid, which is still a lot now these days. So again, I'm not going to go for all of the 8 variants, but there are 8 variants. They range roughly in price, don't quote me, in points, from about 415 to 460, I think now. So a lot of points. Now, they all share the same core abilities or rules per se, which is they move 12 inches, which is far. Got a toughness 13, 2+ save, 24 wounds, leadership 7, and OC of 8. So you've got a model which moves relatively quickly, because I should know this, Rogel Dawns and Lemon Rush Battle Tanks move 10. Very confident that's correct, I should check that. And T13 is a very unique toughness, because Lemon Rush Battle Tanks are 11, Rogel Dawns are 12, and this at 13 makes it a very, very tough model. It's the toughest model in the Astra Militarum rule set, obviously at T13. Now, I don't know wider armies that well, but I think T13 is actually very, very high. It's probably the highest there is. Maybe some of the Knight models, surely a toughness 13, maybe not anymore. But I don't think, for example, a Land Raider is a T13, it's a T12, very confident with that. But there'll be few models out there which are T13. So T13 is a very unique toughness to have. 2+ save is fantastic, and given how big this bloody model is, and given how relatively dense, broadly speaking, competitive tabletops are these days, you're always going to have cover. Yeah, so that means your 2-up save is essentially a 1-up save with cover, obviously. So you're always going to be okay. Now let me just check the movement. Yeah, okay, so Rogel Dawns and Russ move 10, and this moves 12, so it is relatively speedy. Now OC8 is fantastic. You've got like a very big model which has got a relatively high OC, and that does make sense because a Rogel Dawn Tank Commander and Rogel Dawn is OC5. Now, again, the 8 variants all share the weapon options relatively in common. There's a couple of key exceptions. They've got 1 main weapon. They've then got the option to take 4 las cannons, and to be very clear, is in the kit you buy, you only get enough to produce 2 sponsons, which has got 2 las cannons, it's got a las cannon each, and then it's got the twin link weapon. But to be honest, the way I kind of do it is you just say it's got 4 sponsons, because to actually get 4, you've got to buy a separate kit, and that's just getting a bit ridiculous. So you can, of course, see in the rules here that you can equip it with 2 more. I think it says here, yep, it can be equipped with 2 of the following, which is essentially 2 more. So it comes with the main cannon, yeah, which is, in this example, the Baneblade and the Hellhammer. That's the main cannon there. It then has 4 sponsons, which have got las cannons up top, twin-linked heavy bolters, heavy flamers in the actual sponson, and then all of the options have then a front sponson as well. So you're essentially getting 4 las cannons, 1 main weapon, and 5 twin-linked sponson weapons being flamers, heavy bolters. Some of the other variants have got additional weaponry. You can see, for example, the Hellhammer and the Baneblade here have got the Demolisher Cannon, which interestingly is still D6 plus 3. The Lemon Rush tanks have got D6 plus 1, so D6 plus 3 on this is actually quite unique. And then also these versions here have got an auto cannon, and some of them do have heavy stubbers as well. But again, I'm not going to go through all the detail on the actual weapon profiles, but just remember you've got a main cannon, 4 las cannons, and 5 twin-linked heavy bolters, heavy flamers, and some others have got bits and pieces as well. Now, again, obviously, the main weapon is where the party's at, and this will get into what I'm going to make a point in a second, is that you can do devastating damage with this main weapon. This, of course, is the Baneblade cannon, which is 3d6, which I don't love personally, but it's got strength 12, AP 2, 3 damage. For example, the Banesword, which is an amazing weapon. It's the Quake cannon, which is it's d6 plus 6, which is beautiful. It's 16 strength, AP 4, 4 damage, and ignores cover. So beautiful, 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 beautiful. And then, for example, we've got the Stormlord. It is the Vulcan Mega Bolter, which is also carried by one of the big Titan models with 20 shots at 6, 1, 2, and sustained hit 1, which is okay. So that's the point. Again, you've got one main weapon, 4 las cannons, and 5 twin-linked weaponry, and then you've got some other options around it as well. Then it's got 6 attacks, hitting on 4s at 8, 0, 1, so you're flattening pretty much everything, albeit with no AP. And if you do blow up, you've got d6 plus 2, which is comical, the explosion. And their rules, their abilities, broadly are trash. So the Baneblades one is trash. You get the benefits of cover if you're behind it and you're a friendly model, but given where we are in 10th edition, you always have got cover, so this rule's pretty terrible. Now, keywords is you're a vehicle, obviously, you're Titanic, you can pop smoke, and that's it. You're an Imperium model. Now, there's a key rule, keyword missing, which is obviously squadron, which significantly impacts the rules that the orders it can receive from whom, and also the detachments it can benefit from. Broadly speaking, there's 2 detachments that kind of support it. One, which is obvious, but no detachments buff the output of this unit, this model. There is one that kind of does that, Siege, but Siege buffs all units in the sense you can make him have remove the benefits of cover from an opponent's unit, or you can get the smoke, or something else I forget. But of course, the key one you're missing here is Squadron. Yeah, so again, I'm not going to go into the actual points because I'm going to get them all wrong because there's 8 variants to remember, but it's roughly 450, 460 down to like 415, I think it's a Shadowsword, which is the cheapest. So you've got a relatively quick moving model, T13, very tough, 2+ save, fantastic, 24 wounds, which is a lot, but it could be a lot less than you think. T's tough, leadership 7, which is fine, and OC 8. So yeah, and that's the other thing is I should say some of them can carry models. They're a transport, and then also firing deck. So the Stormlord is the big mama. It can carry 40 models and has a firing deck of 12. And there's some other variants which carry less and have got a smaller firing deck. And again, the final way to sort of conceptualize the options is 2 of them have got the actual turret, the twisty turret, which is the Hellhammer and the Baneblade. And then the other options is that you've got ones who've just got a main cannon, and then you've got others which have got a main cannon, which is less powerful, and a transport option. Yeah, and it's roughly, I think, 3, 3, and 2. So that's kind of how you think about it. Right, so as we've learned the data sheets, let's get on to the positives. So firstly, this unit looks, I'm going to swear, fucking badass. Like, this is the fucking pinnacle of looking fucking awesome on the tabletop. This model is amazing. I painted mine several years ago. I'll have to paint a second one. It's an amazing kit to paint. It's a lot of fun. The back of the model purse is my favorite. It's got like a shrine to the Omnisire, where the engine, you can see all the componentry or the instrument panel. There's some great options. You could like it covered in sandbags, have guys sitting on it. It's an amazing model and definitely get massive brownie points and cool fact if you bring it to a game. Now, T13 is a critical breakpoint for a lot of weapons. For example, the one I best know would be a las cannon or a dark lance used by the Drakari bad people. Is their strength 12, which means you go from wounding on 4s into a Rogue or Dawn to wounding on 5s, which is a significantly less favourable outcome for them. And also, likewise, it means against a lot of weapons, up until toughness strength 6 are wounding you on 6s. So that means anything small arms-ish is wounding you on a 6, and anything else is wounding you on a 5. So from a shooting perspective, you will be very survivable. Against just obviously one shot. If you've got rerolls and lethal hits, it changes the mathematics completely, but do remember T13 makes it a very tough model. Now that gets onto this point here, the third point. In some matchups, your opponent may simply be unable to deal with it. And this can be further boosted by stratagems and other units buffing it, which we'll talk about in a moment. So again, I think broadly speaking, and I haven't used this personally in a while, and as I always do in my other videos, is please give me your perspective, if it's been positive or negative, your use and how you decide to use this unit. I haven't used it personally in a while. I haven't seen it used personally either in a long time, but I do think that, depending on where you're playing, what level you're at, is broadly speaking, if you're playing more casual, relaxed games, you probably will just bully people with this thing because it's freaking massive, and if they don't have the units or the knowledge to deal with this unit, it will just bully its way around the tabletop and just, dominate the game. Now, as I said, you have the potential to do devastating amounts of damage. So 4 las cannons, amazing. That's gonna delete a lot of stuff. Yeah, 5 twin-linked heavy bolters, heavy flamers. You're gonna tickle stuff. And the main weapon, in for example the Banesword, which is a good example, the output here is just ridiculous. Yeah, you could roll 12 shots. You've got strength 16, AP 4 and 4 damage. And let me just indulge me if I can get another window open. Say the Shadowsword. The Shadowsword is ridiculous. Hopefully I can find it quite quickly. I should have prepared this better if I can spell. Okay, stick with me. Shadowsword. This is the Titan killer, where you get devastating wounds into monsters and vehicles. But just to illustrate how much potential damage you could do, here it is. Yeah, so these 3 plus 1, 24, 5, 12. Like, it's just crazy. And its rule is if it's shooting a monster or a vehicle, you get devastating wounds. So again, if you land all 4 shots and roll 4 6s, you're going to be doing 48 devastating wounds. Of course you're not. But again, you have the potential to do amazing amounts of damage. Now, that being said, and I spoke about it just a bit before, is that this thing is the definition of dominating a fire lane. You will, like anything, any fire lane that there is when your opponent moves there for whatever reason and maybe shoots you and doesn't do much damage, doesn't kill you, they're going to get hit by this big bad boy. Yeah, like this thing is maximum firepower. As I said, you've got, and I think, what is it, 16 barrels of hell is the joke that goes around, the meme thing that goes around. Like, you've got so much output that you are going to just own a fire lane. And that, as I said, in the lower, more casual, the lower tables and tournaments, the more casual games, is that you will just simply scare off your opponent in some instances, yeah? Now, this is a bit of a smaller one, but its large footprint assists with deep strike and reserve screening, and it's a definition of movement blocking. Yeah, I mean, what else could you ask for besides this brick just going on the tabletop and just blocking your opponent from doing anything? Moving on to an objective, charging into squishy units, for example, or just, as I said, zoning out deep strike or reserve screening as well. Now, OC8 is obviously very good. It's not amazing. I mean, you can have 4 jungle fighters or 5 jungle fighters could out OC this thing, or even just 5 other battle line units, but still OC8's very good. And then a fun one is that T13 for me is the definition of tank shock. Like, this is the ultimate in tank shock. You've got this thing coming at you, you're going to get shocked by it. So, rolling tank shock on this means you've got 13 chances of a 5-up. So mathematically, well, obviously, you've got a much stronger chance of rolling tank shock on this than a Scout Sentinel, which has only got 7 dice. Yeah. Cool, so that's its positives. Now let's look at its negatives. So, even with its recent point drop of about 30 points across all of the variants, it still feels overcosted. Now, I'll get into why that is, and again, I don't want to get too much into, is it actually a viable unit? You decide, but I will obviously point us a certain direction. Now, it obviously absorbs about 25% of a 2,000 point list. Yeah, and I think on that point there, and again, I don't play other armies at all. I just play Guard. Is that if we think about comparable units out there for this cost, let's say a Primarch, and I can't give you authority if they're in this many points. Is that they do so much for the entire army that they're worth themselves are like a beat stick. Like Rabute Gulliman, for example, just picking on one example, he's an absolute beat stick himself, and he gives the rest of the units around him or the army, I can't tell you the exact details, a lot of benefit for him being in a list. Now, this unit doesn't do that. It is itself a beat stick, but it doesn't do really anything else for the rest of your army. And there's a couple of one or two small examples, but they're pretty narrow. So, yeah, and you can see a few more points I'm making there, but you've got a unit which essentially just is by itself. Yeah, it's just by itself. It's going to do loads of damage and might survive the game, but for this many points, if all it does that, again, compared to other armies out there, and again, I can't give you authority on this, is that, you know, if you spent 430 points on a unit making this up as Space Marines, or maybe a Primarch, which is the closest example I can pick on, it's going to give you, again, a very powerful unit individually that buffs everything else around it. Now, as we said, it doesn't have Squadron, and which means only Lord Solar can order it, which means if you want to make a hit on 3s or move 15 inches or be OC9, another 130 points on top. Yeah, so you've got around a 430, 450 point unit. That's 130 on top because you have to pay for that. That's now talking 560. Yeah, so now we're over 25% of your army list going towards this unit, and we can make that more extreme. Now, with Lord Solar, he previously couldn't. Yeah, in a balanced data slate, Lord Solar was debuffed. He could order everything. Then they just said Squadron and Regiment. They took away basically super heavies, non-squadron vehicles, and also abhumans, and then they added him back. So now he can order super heavies. Okay, great. But he's the only model that can do that. He's the only model full stop that can do that. Now, this is a key point. I think this is the issue for me personally, is even with an order hitting on 3s, this unit is not guaranteed to do much damage. Hitting on 3s is good math. It's not great math. It's good math. It's Space Marine math. Yeah, but the lack of rerolls, none of these unit options have got rerolls. There is a way to get reroll ones to hit, which we'll get to in a second. But if you're paying 430 points, you want whatever it looks at to disappear. You don't want to be rolling on the Banesword. You roll, say, 1, you get 7 shots. Hitting on 3s, you drop 4. And then, okay, you're wounding on, say, 3s into a vehicle. But then they've got an invulse save and only 4 goes through. And then likewise, the same mathematics for your twin-linked heavy bolters and your las cannons, is that is simply just not good enough. Yeah, and this is the point, is that for 430, it should be deleting things. And it can delete things, but can is not good enough in my view. And this is a very competitive approach to this. And, you know, I'm obviously speaking more for the tournament style play, which I do a lot more of in the UK. But again, if you're playing casual, you take this with a grain of salt, yeah. But I think that's the key thing, is the lack of rerolls. Some of them can hit on 2s. The Shadowsword, if you keep still, gets an order. You can hit on 2s, great. Okay, that's a little exception. But of course, you've got to keep still. Is that, again, at 430, I want this thing to be deleting things, which is not guaranteed to, but it could. Now, as I said, its abilities range from terrible, being the Baneblade. This set of rules is just trash. I mean, great, you give benefits of cover, but everything gets a benefits of cover in 10th edition. Through to like, okay, for example, the one I closed, the Stormlord, you can embark units into the transport at opponent's movement phase, on the opponent's turn. The Banesword, blows things up on a 3-up, so if they've got a deadly demise ability to blow up on a 3, that's pretty good. Some of them do like mortal wounds, some do battle shock. The Shadowsword has devastating wounds, so they're like okay abilities. Now, one key one to watch out for as well is that being Titanic, it can't Overwatch. So in the FAQ that was released quite a while ago now, you can no longer Overwatch with Titanic units. So that makes sense, because overwatching on this model probably should cost 2 CP because you've got so many shots coming out of it. But they've just said that it just flat out can't do Overwatch, which obviously affects Knights as well and other big models. So that is to be watched out for. Now, at T13, there are still plenty of units that can destroy this thing in one activation. So that probably will mostly come from melee. And we're talking like big chunky blocks of models going into it that have got, I don't know, lethal hits or sustained or lethal hits on 5s. There's certainly stuff out there that can kill this model. Even, like, I played this model once at an RT, like over a year ago now, and the Primarch, the evil Primarch of the world, is chopped this thing in half in one activation, just chopped it in half. So, there are ways to destroy this thing in one go. So yes, T13 probably against shooting attacks is okay, because still the math is in your favour, and you've got 24 wounds. But in melee, I kind of think that's where this unit could be collected, and that's where I've seen it disappear personally, is in close combat. Now this then is another major point, is that it's going to get stuck in pretty much most competitive games. Definitely from the UKTC point of view, and I'll show you terrain in a second. Your opponent, or if your opponent knows what they're doing, they'll just ignore it and give you minimal targets, or they'll just movement block it or clog it up with just chaff sticking to it. So these two are the key one, I think, for mid-ish table in tournaments or players who know what they're doing. To obviously the top level is they'll just go, great, they're just going to ignore that thing the entire game. It's going to be stuck on one end of the board, it's going to dominate the file, and they'll just be like, cool, if I'm going to go out there, I'll just put some junk on there, and then you're going to shoot a unit which is worth 100 points, and yippee. Or movement blocking, and that's the thing. They could just move it, block it by just charging some trash onto it. Sure, you're going to blast them off with your flamers or your bolters, but definitely for the more experienced players, they will just manage around this thing. Now, of course, deploying it could also be a problem depending on the terrain you're using. And again, UKTC is that there is a place to put it on most maps in deployment, but it pretty much means that's the only place you can go. There are other ways to manage around it. Another way that you could do is you could put it in reserves, but that also faces a problem. So again, an FAQ is when you come in from reserves, you have to be wholly within 6 inches of the board edge, and likewise 9 inches away from enemy units. Now, I can't speak of authority, and I should check this before by measuring my model, is that the Baneblade is physically bigger than that, I believe 6 inches, which means when you deploy, you're going to have half of it hanging off the edge. So as per this ruling here, is if a model's too large, and it's to be set up within strat reserves, can it be still set up? And it says yes, obviously, is that set up wholly and touching your battlefield edge, whilst being 9 inches away from enemy units. But during that turn, you set up on the battlefield, it can't do any of the following: make a normal move, advance, fall back, remain stationary, make any attacks with ranged weapons, or declare a charge. So if you did put it in reserves and bring it in from reserves in your turn, and you wanted to shoot at something, you obviously can't. So it'll come in, sit there, and be like, great, I'm here now, and you've got to wait till the next turn before it can even do anything. So that's kind of thing. You could maybe rapid ingress it, which is in your opponent's turn, and then you could move it in your turn. That's an option. But do remember this, is that given it's so freaking massive, coming in from strat reserves is actually quite hard, because it can't do anything in the turn it arrives. So that's the negatives. And I think really it's just, and again, I don't want to point us too much in one direction, but at 430, particularly, and we'll get into a point in a second, is that in an army like Astra Militarum that is mostly about multiple units. We're always about having a relatively high unit count. Even if you go full tanks, you've still got loads of tanks. For an army that is more about that, and they've got one unit which has soaked up so many points, you want this unit to be doing so much work that it probably doesn't sort of give you that. But both from the fact that get damage isn't guaranteed, and also because it might just get stuck in terrain, as we'll discuss about in a second. Anyway, so positives and negatives. Now, how do we effectively use this? So firstly, if you are going to take this to a tournament or an RT, or even with just your friends, is you need to know your mission terrain layouts and where it can be deployed and where it can even move. So now let's go to the UKTC mission pack, and this is the UKTC. This is the United Kingdom Tournaments circuit, and knowing these maps is in this example here, which is whatever this is called here, is it can be deployed there. Yeah, it can be deployed here, and it might be able to be deployed there. So in this map, it can be deployed in good places. Now, if you don't play a particular detachment, it then actually means it can't move very far. So it could move here, but then it can't move out. It could move there and maybe squeeze its way through here, but it wouldn't be able to shoot through here, for example. And likewise, if it goes here, it could drive there, shoot there, and that's basically it. So now another one, this is the classic one always played, is you could be deployed here, cool, and then stuck there, yippee. You could be deployed here, but that means you could be shot quite early. I think it can even go here, but then again, where does it move? So if it was deployed here, it could shoot there, and that's it. You're like, oh, good, great. I've got 430 points sitting there, blasting stuff, that comes near me. But unless I take a certain detachment, which I'll speak about in a second, if I deployed here and my opponent puts units there, it's like, okay, cool. Like, they're just going to hold the objective, and I got this 430 point unit just sat there looking badass that can't get on the objective. And there was a way to do that. We'll speak about. And there's one more to make an example. So this probably is the worst one in UKTC. Again, you could deploy it here, and it stays there all game. You're going to hold your back objective. Great. You could go here. Okay, cool. And then obviously here could just trundle its way forward, blast everything and land an opponent's expansion objective. Maybe it can fit here. But again, unless you take Hammer of the Emperor, it can't move through terrain. So it's going to be sat there. So, if you're dead set on taking this in an RT or anything else remotely competitive, you need to look at where it can actually start the game and where it can actually move if you don't take Hammer of the Emperor. The set detachments. Now, this is the point I made before, is that at this many points, you wanted to just delete stuff. And there are ways to make it more effective, which we'll speak about in a second, but that comes at a cost. This is what I said before, is that, at this many points, you want to pick its moment very carefully. What I mean by that is if it's deployed here, at what point do you push out this bad boy and just start rolling around the tabletop? So in this one, arguably, you could drive it here, you could push it up there, you could drive it here and go that way. At what point do you pick that? And that's going to be driven by several factors. Can your opponent even deal with it? Maybe, for whatever reason, they don't have many units that can deal with a big ass, monstrosity that the Baneblade is, or a Doonhammer, on this side of the board. And then you could pick the chance quite early to push it up, sit on this objective, and just dominate, say, this part of the board. On the flip side, if your opponent has got loads of stuff that can deal with it, when are you going to push out that 430 points to actually do something in the game? Yeah, because maybe if you did do that too early, hadn't picked away a couple of units, made them less effective, you could just get it killed in one go. And there goes 25% of your army list. Yeah, so picking its moment is going to be pretty crucial. And then it gets onto my point here is, as I said, Guard is, broadly speaking, an army which has a supply of units. You've always got a relatively high unit count, relatively speaking. There are some key exceptions, of course, like Hammer of the Emperor potentially, but you've always got enough trash to sort of play the game. Now, this is the exact opposite of that. This gets into sort of playing maybe Knights or even Custodies, where every unit really counts, and obviously 430 points really counts. So it is bringing a very different approach to playing 40k for Astra Militarum. Now, the last point is then, if this unit does get killed early, or gets killed at all, can you theoretically play a game with 1,500 points roughly left? Yeah, could you actually play a game without this model? And as I said before, if, for example, you aren't playing Hammer of the Emperor and you deploy it here, because this feels like a good place to put it, and it just holds your home objective all turn, all game, fantastic. Could you play the rest of the game with 1,500 points going about playing the actual game, contesting objectives, doing actions, movement blocking, all that sort of good stuff? Is that, can you actually play a 2,000 point game with 1,500 points of your list actually able to go in the tabletop? As opposed to, say, putting a mortar team here, 65 points, holding the back objective for the rest of the game, whilst the best part of 2,000 points plays the rest of the game. So could you play a 2,000 point game with 1,500 points? Is how I kind of think about it. And this will be heavily informed by the current meta state of Astra Militarum. So for this, let's go to, oh boy, I don't know if I can even get to it. I think I can go this way. Is Doonhammer 40k stats. Now this, as you know from some of my previous videos, this is pulling in all data from the 40k Battle app, which is a fantastic app to use if you're tracking a game. So everybody who plays a game of 40k in this app goes into it. Everyone who played at the LGT recently on last week in the biggest tournament in the world in London, or playing casual games with your mates on a Tuesday night, So it's everybody contributing to this, the best players in the world through to just average punters like you and me. So win rate percentage here, this is based on the last balanced data slate, is we can basically see now guard is really slipping towards the bottom. Now slipping towards the bottom will be driven by several factors. Obviously the overall, well firstly, how powerful other armies are and how unpowerful guard are, in the sense that we're just been outshone. It'd also be heavily driven by the fact that some of the best players in the world are leaving Astra Militarum to go for the more powerful armies, because they're the best players and they want to play the best armies to have the best chance of winning. And then within that, which I've probably already said, is that there'll be an undercurrent, underlying potential issue is maybe, definitely for guard, is we've had numerous point increases over the last 12 months, which make us feel like we've got less stuff. But anyway, so what I'm getting at is, if this is the state of guard at the moment, and you've got only 1,500 points, you're just going into games with a ginormous handicap. Of course, you might have games where your 430 point unit does a lot of work, but if it does go pop because the Primarch chops it in half, and that's only in turn 2 happened to me, and guard aren't a powerful faction like they were, say, 12 months ago, it's going to be a lot harder for you to carry a unit which isn't highly optimal. So again, if we were playing a year ago where this guard was at the top, doing very well, and I was doing great personally, that's when it kind of feels like it's a good time to play the unit, because the rest of the army can carry you to victory. But again, hopefully get my point on this. So that all being said, let's now look at some configuration options. So firstly, will you fully support this unit? What fully support means is, are you going to drive rules to make it even better than it is? And I kind of think you definitely need the first option, which is you want to have Lord Solar to make it hit on 3s and move potentially 15 inches. Hitting on 3s probably is the key one. You want this unit hitting on 3s. Hitting on 4s is horrible math. It's embarrassingly bad. You all know that. So at 130 points. Yeah, now do you want to make this thing ridiculously powerful and give it a 4+ invulnerable save, which is what a Tech Priest can do. So another 45 points. Now 4+ invul save probably is most effective against shooting attacks. Because interestingly, in combat, most things are AP2, some are AP3, but still a 4++ is very good. So another 45 points on top. So already, if we're going for the full package, you've got 175 points on top. Just babysitting, but just looking after this big mama. Now, Scout Sentinels is the only way I know of giving this model re-rolls, and that's only once to hit. So if you take 3, probably the good choice is to then have 3 units that can die, or die for 3 turns, for example. Another 55 points times 3 is 165 points. So suddenly, to run this unit effectively, if you went all in, you're talking already in like another 200, 300, 400 points of support pieces, yeah? So that's if you go all in. And then if you're dead set on taking this, I probably think you should just go all in on it and really support it, make it super powerful, and make sure it survives. This Tech Priest can heal it back D3 every turn, great. And also do amazing amounts of damage. Yeah, that's kind of what I think you've got to do with this if you're going to go into it. Now, detachments that will naturally support this is Hammer the Emperor feels like the very best attachment. And the key reason for that is that you can move through terrain via the stratagem Crash Through, I think it's called. So for 1 CP, you can drive through terrain. So that removes the big problem I called out before, which is in certain maps, you will just get stuck. So again, and this one's a good example, is that you do have plenty of places to deploy it, but if you deployed it here, and you can't drive through this terrain piece, for example, then great. But if you can drive through that for 1 command point, suddenly you've got more options. So you could drive through there, could drive through there. The only issue with that then is you're paying 1 CP every time you wanted to move aggressively. Because if it drove here, that's 1 CP. If it wanted to say, I don't know, drive over there, another CP. If you wanted to drive it into your opponent's deployment, another CP. So you are not only paying 430 points plus all its mates, but additional CP every turn, theoretically, to make this thing even move. Now, that also being said, if you use the ablative plating stratagem, which I think is 2 CP, or is it 2 CP or 1? It's not cheap. I think it's 2. Ablative plate. Yes, it's 2 CP. 2 CP is a lot for this stratagem. Is that if you do wish to do it on this unit, this is the unit to do it, yeah? Because obviously 24 wounds, which is -1 damage, theoretically is 36 wounds, keep with me here, versus a, well, yeah, versus say versus a unit with less wounds, say a Rogue or Dawn Tank Commander or Limb and Rust Battle Tank, is given you've got more wounds, it's almost like this stratagem pays off more, if that makes sense. Likewise, you can advance and fall back and shoot. So on a unit this big, and let me just check if actually that's true, because I think maybe Blazing Advance, oh, no you can't. So Blazing Advance requires you to be Squadron, and Tactical Withdrawal, right, okay, so delete that, Jeffrey, is you can't do that because those stratagems rely on the Squadron keyword, so ignore that. So all you can do, well, what can be buffed is you can move through terrain and you can be -1 damage. Okay, so Hammer the Emperor does help. Now, Mechanized Assault, I know some of my patrons have tried out this very fantastic combination. Is in Mech Assault, this is also a very good option for it. So you could take a Stormlord, which has got the big mama, so you could stick in 40 dudes, uses as your sole transport unit to send dudes out to their death to get the +1 to wound. And given also its ability, is you can embark a single unit if the transport is empty in your opponent's end of their turn. So therefore you've got dudes in there to send out next turn. So this is certainly one way to use it. There are, of course, other options. I'm not going to guess them because I'm going to get them all wrong. I think the Doonhammer also has a transport option and a firing deck. So any of the transport options could work very well in Mech Assault, because again, you've got loads of transport capacity, you've got a firing deck, and you can send guys out to go and, you know, get +1 to wound and kill stuff on objectives. So, how long have we been speaking? Oh, 36 minutes. So look, I've obviously pointed us a certain direction on, is it actually a viable unit? I think you can probably agree, you know, like I've not seen it at all in any of the top performing lists in the recent months, nor did I really see it at all over the last 12 months. There was a period in time, I think like last year, where definitely I think in US tournaments, which maybe were used player-placed terrain, which I personally never used much, is where it's got a better chance, because obviously with player place, you can create terrain layouts where there are big fat spaces to move. Likewise, I believe GW terrain layouts are a bit more spread out, but still fundamentally in the tournament scene, I have not personally seen a super heavy appearing in any top lists. You see plenty of Rogue or Dawns and Rust Tank Commanders, but never have I seen a super heavy. Now, if you have, you know, if someone is placed well, we're talking like top 5, 10 in super big tournaments, around the world, let me know. But I'm clearly pointing us one direction, which is if you're going to be if you're playing competitive games like I am, this unit just doesn't have it yet. Now, as always, if you disagree, let me know, and let me know why. If you know how to use it more effectively, tell me, because I'd love to know, because I'm desperately keen to play mine. I painted it up many years ago. I think I played it once and I did horrible at it, but certainly, you know, I've painted quite a negative tone on it. You got a, you know, 430 now is feeling more stomachable. It is cheaper. It can do a lot of damage, but I still think, as I've made the point here, is that if you're going to take it, you want to take all its support friends. You know, Lord Solar at a minimum. Tech Priest probably isn't necessarily always needed, and definitely Scout Sentinels get real ones to hit. So what's your perspective? How do you find this model on the tabletop? Have you used it? What's your experience? And how do you actually think it could be used in Astra Militarum in its current state? So as always, leave a comment and let me know. I try to always leave like a little YouTube love heart thing, which shows I've seen the comment. So I really look forward to hearing from all of you out there in the 40k universe. So like always, if you want to support me, you can do so with a like, comment, or by subscribing. Joining my Patreon platoon, where you get a signed miniature for the roll call end of each video, or simply watching my end of YouTube videos, or becoming a channel member. Really appreciate all the support I get from you, my viewers, subscribers, channel members, and importantly, my Patreon platoon members. So keep your bayonet sharp, last gun oiled. Faith in the Emperor strong. Patreon platoon, sound off. Tank Commander Glenn. Tank Commander Mitchell. Tank Commander Watchdog Van Etten. Lieutenant Burke Nielsen, Lieutenant Smith, Colour Sergeant DuPont, Sergeants Adal, Scott, to Colonel Merrill, Veterans Gibson, Hall, Lundeen, Guardsman Beard, Coquelin, Easingwood, Hills, Lyons, Malik, Nitton, Medicae Rolfe, Tontkin, Conscripts England, Evanghan, Goodwin, Honorary Members Balgrim King, Syker Smith, Cyan Gaylard, Aquilon Nassim.